name is Alexandra Dobrowolsky, and I'm a professor of political science at St. Mary's University. I also have adjunct status at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I work on Canadian and comparative politics, and my area of interest is looking at Canada-UK, and I've looked at this relationship across the years in various different realms. Initially, I was looking at constitutional activism and how the UK could learn from Canada in relation to our constitutional mobilization that occurred in the early 1980s. So when New Labour came into power in 1997, there was devolution to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and I did research in all of those areas to map out some of the feminist strategies around devolution. And at that time, the UK was looking to us. Since then, they've sort of surpassed us in terms of some of the developments in relation to women in politics. For example, in the last UK election, the percentage of women in the House of Commons has increased to 29%, whereas we're at 26%. So they kind of learned from us and surpassed us. So initially, I worked on constitutional activism, but increasingly, I changed focus to look at social policy and looked at basically the development of what's been called the social investment state in the UK under New Labour. This was a paradigm that was trying to find a middle path between neoliberalism and social democracy, and that middle path was focused on youth and children and employability. And there was a lot of policy transfer between Britain and Canada on that issue, so I focused on social policy. That was kind of between the late 1970s into the mid-2000s. Since then, we've had conservative governments, a coalition government in the UK and a conservative government in Canada that's kind of backtracked on some of these elements. And most recently, what I've been looking at is some of the similarities leading up to the last general elections in the UK and in Canada. On one hand, there's been a lot of similarities. For example, in the lead up to the 2015 election, we both have had strong conservative, ideologically oriented parties. We had leftist parties that have kind of moved center and become more pragmatic, and we've had liberal parties in both countries that were struggling, yet having very similar kind of political landscapes before the 2015 election. The outcomes are very different, very unanticipated outcomes in both countries, where in Britain there was a majority conservative government and in Canada a liberal majority government. So my project now is to try to explain the differences. So at this conference in Halifax, I was looking at institutions, ideas, and identities to explain this difference. And my ultimate proposition was that there were imaginaries and identities having to do with multiculturalism, having to do with citizenship, and having to do with migration that really explain the difference in the two countries. And that's what I'm continuing to pursue in my research at the moment.